welcome to this live stream, a live Q&A with Jack Lusted, Game Director of Thrones of Britannia. We're live now on Facebook and Twitch. Jack, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to everyone watching, just in case they haven't heard of you before?
As Mike said, I am the Game Director on Thrones of Britannia, and my name's Jack Lusted.
Fantastic. So we have grabbed a lot of questions from around the internet, including Facebook, Twitter, and our own Total War forums. And we're going to be answering some of the questions that you guys have been giving us throughout the week. And we'll start off with the first collection, which are from Facebook. And the first one that Facebook would like to know, Jack, is will there be unique diplomatic options in Thrones of Britannia?
The diplomatic options available are going to be largely similar to what they were in Attila. We have made a few changes. Trading is now automatic. If you're at peace with someone and you can reach them, they will trade with you. And some options will also be tied to new culture mechanics. So, for example, the legitimacy mechanic that we talked about in the previews with the Mede faction, that is tied to whether you can annex factions or not. So if you hit a certain level, that option unlocks in diplomacy, and then you can annex another faction if you want to.
Okay. So we saw rather recently that when we recruit new units on the campaign map, they don't start at full strength. So will units have their full upkeep and recruitment costs straight away if they're not recruited at 100%?
They will still have full upkeep cost. The upkeep cost in total nowadays not just represents the day-to-day maintenance of a full strength unit, but also the cost of replenishing up to full strength as well. I mean, it's something we've done since Shogun 2, because it means it's much more sort of coherent of this unit always costs this much. Because, yeah, there might just be 12 dudes left in it, but that will soon be 160 men, so you've got to pay for that.
So, is there a good enough difference between factional units to be excited about in Thrones of Britannia?
So we've got 5 main faction groups in the game, and there's distinct rosters between each of them. One of the faction groups, the Gaelic Kingdoms, has 2 distinct rosters within it as well. So there's the Irish roster and the Scottish roster. Each faction also has a unique line of troops. With the Anglo-Saxon roster reveals, it showed that West Saxa had the Select Fjord units as special, and Meuse had the Marcher Spearmen. And this is repeated across the board. Obviously, this is just the British Isles. There's a limit to how far we can push the diversity, but we're trying to make the factions as distinct as possible.
And speaking of distinctions between certain cultures, no points for guessing where this question came from, but will the Welsh finally get the attention they deserve and have their own voice actors?
We'll be talking more about the Welsh soon. There is a Welsh accent in the game. We have 4 accents that are used: Welsh, Irish, English, and Nordic.
And the next question is, when discussing armies and their capabilities, what kind of formations are we going to be seeing used?
So we have 2 different types of formations. The question doesn't specify, so I'll talk about both. So we've got unit formations, which are generally abilities. We have the shield castle formation that you'll have seen in some of the preview videos, where it's got the soldiers with like the shields like that, which is great against missiles. Some units have wedge, which is great for trying to punch through an enemy line. And then at the sort of army and group level, there's a variety of choices players can do, and we tweak them to reflect the period. So like now soldiers, melee infantry deploy with very little space between them, so you get like a nice unbroken line of troops at the front.
Nice. So one thing that we've seen in quite a few historical Total War titles is the ability to play famous historical battles from the period. Is that going to be an option in Thrones of Britannia, or are we going to see things like the Battle of Clontarf?
With Thrones, and with such a emphasis on sort of narrative elements and story emerging from the sandbox, we haven't gone for specific historical battles. Instead, we sort of put the effort we would go for that back into the game to try and make each battle more special. Examples I like to use are a battle which, if you win it, that means you can get peace from a faction and your War Fervour can start to build back up and your kingdom's in less turmoil. Or you're trying to kill off this 10 command enemy general who you know that if you don't beat him here, he's going to go and hit your weaker stack next and maybe kill your heir or something. It's all about trying to build those little stories, those little moments into as much of the game as possible.
Okay. So from what's been told, there's quite a few different mechanics, more than we'd see from normal. Can you elaborate on these new features and why they were implemented?
That's the question, basically. Explain the whole game in a single answer. So you're not going to get all of it. As we were talking about the unit recruitment stuff and below strength earlier, it's good to talk about that some more. So now there is this global pool of units for faction. Each unit in the pool has a number available from the start, and then a max number of units available of the type, and each turn there's a chance that a unit might have an extra one added to its pool. Mm-hmm. So it means that, like, your cheap basic spearmen, there might be a max pool of 5 at the start, but your elite guys, there's 1. And one might replenish 20% of the time, one might replenish 2% of the time. It's really emphasising that, levy units are available a lot of the time, elites are very rare, and it makes it more special, because, you can recruit a mixture of troops from the start, but you lose that elite unit, you're going to have to wait a long time before it's available again.
So we've seen quite a few fantastic soundtracks come out of Total War games. Lots of people have their favourites, that's for sure. What can we expect from the soundtrack that we're going to see from Friends of Britannia?
People have probably heard a bit of it in the footage that's already come out, and I think it's a really great mixture that fits the time period. It's got quite a bit of a Celtic feel to it, and in more videos we release, you'll hear more and more of it. It's hard to talk about a soundtrack without people being able to hear it, but you're going to get plenty of footage before release to hear how good this is.
Well, looking forward to that. So it's been sort of rumoured that terrain variations like mountains to hills are going to play a big part on the campaign map. Can you elaborate quickly on that?
It's an odd rumour, because we've had that in every Total War game.
Yep.
And it's certainly something that I think gets emphasised a bit more in Thrones because of the more zoomed-in nature of the map. And we have certainly put a lot of effort as well to make sure that, as much as possible, where you fight on the campaign mirrors what you see on the battlefield. So if you fight with 2 armies and there's a settlement nearby and a mountain over there, that you should see that when you fight on the battlefield.
Okay, so the next load of questions are coming from our Twitter followers. So if there are any Twitter followers watching out, shout out to you, because these are your questions. And the first one Twitter would like to know is, what is the feature that you are most proud of in this game?
Talking about a single feature is hard for Thrones, because so much of the new gameplay for it is about how all the features tie together. So we have the new recruitment mechanic, which ties into then what you can do with buildings. And then the buildings tie into what you do with technologies and how you unlock them through actions. And then, well, what about your characters now? That reflects everything. So singling out one, quite hard. One thing I would single out, which isn't, I suppose you could call it a feature because of how nice it is the art style, which you talked about in the narrative video. And I think it's just great how it's in the event movies, the unit cards, and the building icons. It just gives everything a really nice feel and sort of immerses you in the era.
I know that when we posted the narrative spotlight video, the forums were just comment after comment commenting on how much they love the art style of the unique events, and it does look fantastic and really sells the period. It's
such a great look.
So the second question is, how would you compare this game with other Total War games?
The closest comparison... Okay, so Shogun 2 is one of our bigger titles, so it's hard to say, because it's a different price point and everything. But that's certainly the closest in terms of feel, because you've got the very tight geographic scope focused on a very focused area. I also like to compare it to the original Medieval, where it had sort of very strong character personalities with their vices and virtues and stuff. A few more quality life improvements since the original Medieval, it's a bit more advanced.
So there's a few questions that we've sort of collated about multiplayer and how that's going to play out in Friends of Britannia. And one of the ones that we saw quite a lot was, are we going to see free-for-all multiplayer in Friends of Britannia?
Thrones multiplayer features are the same as Attila's. You get multiplayer battles, multiplayer campaigns with both cooperative and head-to-head. There is no free-for-all, I'm afraid.
I'll have to tune back into Warhammer for the free-for-all battles and stick to our hard line-v-line multiplayer on Thrones. So the next one that we've got is, why didn't you choose to set it before the Viking invasions instead of the post-Viking invasion setting that we are currently inhabiting in Thrones?
I talked about this quite a bit in the Y878 AD blog we put out not long after the game was announced. But the main reason is Attila was all about this big foreign invasion force coming in, wrecking everything, and how do you survive against that? Doing the same again for Thrones feels like just a repeat. And doing a repeat also misses out on the great moment of what happens after that big invasion happens. The Vikings are coming in, they've overturned the political order. Who's going to come out on top next? And it's a great narrative and story opportunity.
And it puts us in a good position where, everyone's got a big central goal of ruling this land of Britannia, and you could come at it from any angle, which is pretty exciting.
It's all about who takes advantage, who goes, everything's been flipped over, now I'm going to be in charge.
So the next question from Twitter is, with the removal of agents in the game, how will reconnaissance and sabotage be carried out?
We've removed agents from Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of feedback on agents in our various games from both the press and players, and so we're trying something different. So a lot of the features from agents have been incorporated into generals, but with reconnaissance, it's more a general approach we've gone for. So previously in Attila and Warhammer, you can see everything in your own territory, but once you get to your territory, there's in the fog of war, and you can't really see without agents. Now, you can see fully into neighbouring regions of other factions. So you can see if enemy armies are coming towards you, or maybe a friend is now building up lots of armies on your boardroom. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should be a bit worried about that. It's a period where it's a focused time scale. People would have known if an enemy army was coming towards them.
And that kind of ties into the fact that you are trading with everyone from the get-go that you can. So, you're going to have your men and women searching out throughout the lands already. You know the lay of the land in Britannia. Yeah.
It'd be silly for you to not know what's going on in another part of the map. That's not the hugest scale we're going for.
So a sort of secondary part to this, the question that we just asked is, are we going to see these new innovative changes that we brought from Thrones of Britannia brought into newer games like Three Kingdoms?
I mean, each game is going to have a different approach to it. Like, what I love about Total War is that each game has an approach and feature set that is right for that era. So, we've gone for this approach without agents for Thrones. For Three Kingdoms, you'll have to wait and see.
I suppose what they're asking is this going to be sort of like a testing ground for new ideas for Total War?
Every game always is. We always learn from each other. Mm-hmm. But without wanting to spoil things in the future, you've got to wait and see what we do. There's always changes coming. Always more to do.
So back to Thrones now. How do you decide on wars and campaigns to base this new Saga series on?
With the Saga titles, we have started off with this very focused look, and I think we'll repeat that for future ones. But for now, we're very much focused on getting Thrones as good as it can be, and then who knows for the future? There's always a big long list of eras we want to do.
That's just
never a shortage.
The eternal struggle of the studio, isn't it?
Always too many options.
So why did you choose to have unit caps, and do you think this will impact the AI army composition and the feeling of the diversity between the rosters?
I mean, the unit caps, as I said before, are very much soft caps. There's nothing on the individual armies that says you can have only so many elite units. Yeah. You can, with enough time, build an army of all elites. It's going to be tough with the unit pools and the starting replenishment rates, but over time, sure. In terms of how the AI builds its armies, because you've got this global pool and there's sort of a mixture of levy and elite guys available from the beginning, you're going to see good diversity. And I think it's a diversity that you'll see throughout the campaign. Like, you're always going to need your levy troops because they're more readily available, they're cheaper, they replenish faster. So even at the very late game, I suspect you still have some levies in armies as well as elites.
And that sort of ties into the tiered system that we're using as well, which means that those levies will get better over time as well.
Yeah, they are, unlike in Attila where levies would eventually become elite. In this one, they remain levies, but they do improve over time through technologies.
So the next set of questions and the final set are from the forums, and as you can imagine, these are probably the most numerous questions. So we'll start off with the first one, which is, will the real-time battles reflect the nature of 9th century warfare in Britannia, i.e. shield wall versus shield wall, and will it feel unique and different from Attila?
This is something I've been talking about quite a bit on the forums recently. There's been a few threads about this, and it's a topic I like to talk about because there's quite a bit of depth you can go into in terms of the changes. Previously on a stream, I think it was the first Q&A we did after Thrones was announced, I said, oh, of course there's shield wall abilities in. We've not got shield wall ability anymore. Because playing the game, the way the shield wall ability worked from Attila, you can't run in it, you can't charge in it, and once you're in combat it will eventually turn off as your troops spread out. So it's not really something that represents this is how they fought all the time. So instead what we've done is we've tightened the spacing of all the units that would have had shield wall. They're all really compact. We've shortened charge distances, so it's not like this huge long charge over which troops spread out, much more sort of an organised, shorter sort of sudden rush together. And it helps give that feel of it being a shield walls grinding against each other. And I think it plays out in the combat as well, where if you just have two units fighting each other, it's going to take a long time for it to complete. But the emphasis is getting round the shield wall, trying to break through it, to then break the enemy's morale and win the battle that way.
And that's where those formations like the wedge are going to come in to smash through those enemy lines.
Yeah. Or just simply extending your shield wall to be longer than the enemy and trying to wrap around. Or maybe you've got better cavalry, or maybe you positioned your archers on the flanks and you're pouring fire into the unshielded side of the enemy. all that kind of stuff. It's still in Thrones.
So the second question from the forums is, has the campaign map AI been worked on in it?
Simple answer is yes, we always work to improve our AI. But it's interesting because I've seen other people in the forums ask, is it going to be more aggressive, is it going to be more defensive? And the answer is, that's going to depend on the AI personalities. One of the big things we've gone for is making it so that AI personalities are more believable. So that they will have a set of traits in diplomacy that you'll be able to see, and when you mouse over it and it says, like, this guy likes more gold, they will like more gold. This guy is more aggressive, they're going to be more aggressive. A great example is the raiding Viking factions that can come into the game. Because they are very aggressive, and they love gold, which means that they will attack anyone they come across, but if you've got lots of gold, you can try and bribe them, and they may help you for a while, but they're probably not going to help you forever, because they're really aggressive. Like, we want them to be true to what they say.
So we're going to see lots of personality-driven miniature empires clashing against each other.
That's I hope. And those personalities for some of the, like, not for the raiding Viking faction, you know, we want them to be very aggressive. For some of the inland ones, you might see their personalities change from king to king as well. So one king dies and you might get a very different experience from the next.
As you would. So next question is, are we going to see any new combat animations in game?
There's some new ones for the new formations we've done. So the shield castle formations had a few added to it to make it look right. And we've also worked more on the cavalry refusal animations. Because there's now, by default, if you're charging cavalry into a braced unit of infantry, they're going to rear up and they're not going to go home. Because this is not an era of knights with stirrups. This is cavalry who are not going to charge into that dense block of troops. They're just going to go, no, we're not doing this.
So, this is quite a long question. With food being as important as it is in this game, A, can you stockpile and how does it work? So we'll start with that one. So does food ever go bad?
So the food system is mainly like Attila's, but with the additional change that you'll only get provincial penalties if you're in a global food negative. So your food is a sum of your food production versus your food expenditure. So it can change turn to turn. There's not really a concept of it going off. It's just like the amount available food is a way of going, here's sort of your safety net. Because food require food. Units require food now. So if you want to rush build an army, you better have the food available, otherwise you're going to get some penalties.
So the second part of this question, point B, is are there ways of acquiring food beyond farms and fishing? For example, things like trade. And can factions that might have fewer food production resources get help from other factions?
Not through trade, but you can raid for food. That's a nice way to get it, and that will also help with other things we've introduced, like supplies. And there are followers as well that help you get more food as well.
Okay.
So you can help manage it that way.
Is War Fervour affected by multiple ongoing wars at the same time?
So War Fervour, which is an extension of the war readiness system from Charlemagne, has both positive and negative factors, so you can go up or down depending on your score. Yes, multiple wars will affect it, but we track a lot of factors for it, so are you neighbouring a faction? If you're not, it's not going to have much effect on your populace. Losing battles has an effect, losing settlements, winning battles. Have you had lots of people declare war on you, but you're keeping all your armies at home? That will affect the value as well. And difficulty levels too, so it's going to be harder to manage on harder difficulties.
Okay. So it's going to be more of a global, what your faction's opinion is of the current state of affairs.
Yeah, it's basically how happy your people are.
Yeah.
And like, because being at peace for a long time can be a penalty as well. I saw a lot of people discuss this once it came out in the preview events, and the idea behind that is that kingship in this era is all about redistributing wealth. And if you're at peace for a long time, you're not going out and conquering lands and getting potential new lands for your generals and rewards for them. So they could be like, oh, maybe this isn't a very good king. So very positive War Fervour. You'll have bonuses to your troops because they're going to be eager to fight, but people might not think very much of your king.
So does being at war with multiple factions have a bigger impact in that sense then?
So as covered above, yeah, more wars you have, the quicker your War Fervour will drop. Though if they don't border you, it will have less of an impact.
Okay. So if you get lots of random nations from different parts of England trying to cause a conflict with you, it's not necessarily going to drop that straight away because they might be so foreign to you that it's not really going to affect you.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can certainly get situations where if you annoy a lot of factions and they all declare war on you, other factions may join in the pile-on because they view you as a really weak target. But if they don't border you, it's not an immediate threat.
So what will the off-map factions be and how much will they influence campaign play? Like, can you trade with them, for instance?
you can only trade with factions who hold territory. That's a general rule. I mean, they're far more. There's some stuff with off-map factions I can't talk about yet, but I can talk really about the ones that are representing the different Viking raids that still occurred in this era. Some will happen at dates actual raids did, but others will spawn as needed, and it will vary from campaign to campaign. And the size of the armies can vary as well. So each campaign you're going to get different raids going on across the map. And they're there basically going, yeah, your lands are still rich and prosperous. Vikings from off the map are still going to come and want to try and take it from you. So you're going to try and defend.
As is their very being.
Yeah. And how much impact they have will depend on who they target. Like, if they target a weak faction that's at war, they might be able to gain a foothold and then aggressively expand. If they attack someone more well prepared, might go bad. Again, it's going to vary from campaign to campaign.
So we can see those raiding Vikings almost establishing themselves as new nations, almost.
Yes, though they will still be very aggressive and out for loot.
So what will the religion mechanic, sort of the new religion mechanic for Friends of Britannia be? So we've seen that we're not using the one from Attila. Is there going to be something similar to Rome 2 with culture focus?
There's not really any mechanic like that in the game. I mean, us not having the religion mechanic certainly caused a lot of discussion on the forums. But it's an era where people sort of cohabited a lot. Yes, the original Viking invasion caused a lot of disruption, but that was, here's a big invading army coming to attack you. Because by this point, like the Danelaw, there's loads of English and Vikings living alongside each other. And there's no real records of day-to-day sort of conflicts going on there. They seem to be quite happy with their new rulers. A lot of churches were maintained and stuff. You will see a lot of reference to religion and the different cultural aspects in event messages and flavour text to get across that religion was a big part of the world, and that there are all these different beliefs that are going on. Like Anglo-Saxon England, whilst being Christian for centuries, still had little beliefs around whites and elves and other weird little things they inherited from their Germanic paganism. And the Irish have different sort of myths going into that, and we like to drop that kind of flavour into the game.
Okay, nice. Are we going to see the raze mechanic from Attila be present in this game?
The only two options occupying a settlement are going to be sack and occupy. Raze doesn't really fit this era. The Vikings tended to like to just take all the gold and then leave a settlement be, because they knew it would maybe build up again, and then they come back next year and go, oh, you've got this money again. Oh, great. The records of certain monasteries been raiding 3 or 4 times, so it doesn't really make sense for the era to have this sort of burning and sorting the earth mechanic. Very much fitted with Attila and its apocalyptic feel. Here, it's very much about you want to take the money, but you want to sort of leave the settlement intact to a degree.
So we have less than 2.5 months left before Friends of Britannia release day. What's the time frame that we have for sort of alpha and beta testing?
So Thrones is an alpha at the moment, which means it's feature complete. So we've got everything into the game, and now we are looking at refining the features, making key improvements to it, and we're also filling the bug fixing cycle. So I know people see like footage and go, oh, it's alpha state, and worry, but we're in a very solid position. We're very confident we're going to release it at the quality level people expect from us. With every game, there's always more polish you can do to it. That's true for every game that's ever been released. Nothing everyone's gone, oh, this is great, I don't want to do anymore. There's always more you want to do. There's always more to do, but we're going to get it out at the right quality level so people can enjoy it.
So to expand on that, do you think the 2.5 months is enough time to sort of lock in core features and to polish Friends of Britannia prior to its release date on April 19th?
Absolutely, it's in a really good state.
Okay.
It's going to be a great game.
So during the campaign map reveal, it was mentioned that Wales was a bastion of Romano-British culture during the period. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Out of all the areas of Britain and Ireland, Wales is sort of the place where the remnants of Roman influence sort of lasted the longest. A lot of the Welsh kingdoms at the time, their dynasties traced their ancestry back to, I've written it down here because I can't pronounce it very well, Maxen Wledig, or Magnus Maximus as the Roman emperor was known in Wales. So a lot of them had the story about how he fathered their dynasties and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not true, but it shows how that kind of legitimacy was felt as important to the Welsh. And during the early part of the post-Roman era, a lot of the Welsh, there's written records of them referring to themselves as citizens and magisters and like all these old Roman terms. Like, by the 9th century, a bit less important, but there is still those ties there that sort of go back to that history, and it's the place where it endured the longest.
Okay. Are we going to see continued support for Friends of Britannia after release?
For now, we're just focused on getting the game as good as we can for release.
Okay.
That's all we're going to talk about.
A bit more nerdy, this one. Is this game 64-bit or 32?
So the XE is 32-bit, but we have made that large address aware, so that requires a 64-bit operating system, which you've seen in the minimum and recommended specs we've released.
Mm-hmm.
It does allow us to use more memory, get a bit better performance.
Okay. Are there building trees in major settlements, as in Attila, with multiple choices at some tiers? Or is it more like Warhammer, where once you've chosen a building, it's just a series of linear upgrades?
So I can't really talk about the whole building system. That'd be a lot to go into detail with. We are going to be talking more about building system technology soon and go into real detail about how that works. Because just talking about major settlements would miss the point without also talking about miners and how those all combine together. So more information soon.
So this is quite a big question for some people. Are naval battles in the game?
Big question, simple answer, yes.
Good. Okay. Are we going to be talking about that at some point soon, or?
They're naval battles. You got some longboats. People fight. It's a Viking era thing.
Cool.
It's pretty good.
Would you say this game will provide the deepest campaign gameplay of all the games in the series to date? It's quite a bold claim.
It's a bold claim. It's a loaded claim as well, because that's very much going to depend what you enjoy from the campaign map. Like, personally, I'm going to, of course, say yes. We've really delved down into the narrative and the story, and the scope of the game allows us to do that. But, you know, for people who might have liked Agents more, probably not. Trying to say which Total War game is the greatest depth to it is going to depend on what you like. If you like battles more, maybe something like Warhammer is your favourite game. If you liked more choices, maybe an Attila is your game. Because with the skill trees and stuff in Attila, there's a bit more sort of play control, especially with edicts. Here it's much more about the traits the characters gain, which are a bit more random and a bit more derived from gameplay. So it's more organic rather than specific choice. Each Total game, I think, offers something different for players. I hope people will really enjoy the narrative and story elements we've got in this and the refined features and how they all play together.
I think they definitely will. So next up, we're running out of questions now, so we're getting to the end. How does the battle pace compare to previous titles?
We're aiming for 12 to 15 minute battles, and because someone questioned this in the forums earlier, that's from start battle to the end. Someone thought that was just the fighting bit, which would be very hard to track on its own. That'll be between full stack armies. That's the kind of pace we're going for. We're obviously still balancing the game and polishing it, so that may vary, but we're with that kind of length to give it a nice, decent fight.
Okay. And as a sort of secondary part to that question, are there many unique features that differentiate combat to match the style of the period?
That was really covered when I was talking more about Shield Wars earlier. It's really trying to get combat to feel as close to the era as possible. That feeling of these two walls, and then the key moment being when the morale changes and that what breaks one side and causes the big rout.
Okay, so final question of the live stream, and this is probably the most important question to
obviously.
We just saw the narrative spotlight trailer where you're wearing a fantastic red suit. Roughly how many Charlemagnes did you spend on that red suit?
So that suit cost me less than I earn in a month, and what I earn in a month is less than what we call a man month internally, which is like the actual cost of having a person for a month there, which includes like lighting, electricity, all that kind of stuff. And then we spend a lot of man months in Charlemagne, so it's 1,000th of a Charlemagne, like a pico Charlemagne is a measurement or something, a micro Charlemagne.
Is Charlemagne the next cryptocurrency that we're going to see come out? All right, thank you very much for joining us, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. When can we hear some more features? We've got some new hits coming out soon, I imagine.
Oh, there's always more videos coming.
Always more videos coming.
We're not far from release now. There's going to be a lot more to tell.
We're going to see even more fantastic suits coming from these.
Always. I don't own anything but fantastic suits.
Fantastic. All right, thanks very much for joining us, Jack. And